Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is Tyrone back with Tech Life. And recently I ran a poll over on X, formerly known as Twitter, and I just wanted to share it with the channel. And the question I asked, if T-Mobile found a legit buyer for a big chunk of its millimeter wave spectrum, would they sell it? And I got 126 votes, and 57% voted yes, 43% voted no. I believe the people that voted no are the people that are still desperately waiting for T-Mobile to make use of that spectrum, which they haven't. So I agree with the 57% that voted yes. They can create two options. They can sell a big chunk or they can lease it because they're not using it. Let's be honest here. They are not deploying it to any capacity. They might throw it on a few macros here and there, but it's to no use. This type of spectrum with the frequency as high as it is, you have to deploy it. You have to deploy it on small cells. The frequency has to get closer to the user equipment. And you have to deploy it extensively. You can't just put it on two small cells and call it a day. You have to deploy a bunch of small cells in any given area that you want to make use of it. Now, T-Mobile is still saying that they will use it smartly where it makes sense, but that's only a very small percentage. Recently, they disclosed that there's two big events back to back in Vegas, and they're not using millimeter wave. So how can you say no? If it's just sitting in the warehouse, not being used, you might as well make some financial gain from it. They have a frequency of millimeter wave in the 47 gigahertz that has no device support right now. Don't even know if there's any OEM equipment to even deploy it. And to top it off, the current model that T-Mobile is using for backhaul, for fiber, is a leasing model. That leasing model is not going to work with deploying millimeter wave. Not going to work. They're going to have to take on owners' economics. They're going to have to deploy their own fiber to make this work because they have to deploy a lot of nodes to make use of this spectrum. And even when T-Mobile was asked at earnings calls of a more positive future outlook for the millimeter wave, the only thing that they could come up with is that they would use it for fixed wireless access, maybe. And that's a big maybe. They said that they would have to probably set aside a separate capital specifically deploying millimeter wave. And then they discussed that their macro grid is dense enough to deploy it on the macros. And I just don't see that working. Yes, Verizon has it on some of the macros, but it's supplemented by small cells that are nearby. You have to embrace the grind and the financial burden that this deployment is going to take on. It's going to be expensive, especially if you have to do it on if you're going to continue the lease model on fiber. You're going to have to take on a lot more OpEx to deploy this throughout the neighborhoods, right? The third party, the ILEC, will have to bring its fiber. They will have to trench it in these neighborhoods for you so you can connect it up to the nodes. T-Mobile is not going to take that on financially right now. Not going to happen. So what do? Right? Think about it from a business perspective. Do you just let it sit, or do you lease it? Or do you sell some of it? You're not going to use it. I would be shocked if T-Mobile gets even to a 5% deployment by the end of this decade. I would be shocked. Right now, it's only active in a small percentage of 8 cities. And if you total up the deployment in all those 8 cities, I don't even know if the millimeter wave coverage gets to 1%. And that's totaling all of the 8 cities, right? They have it deployed in New York City and Manhattan and in some of the more denser areas where they have like a really dense macro grid. And I would say probably there it has its use, right? There's probably some high traffic areas that are offloaded onto the millimeter wave. So there it probably has its use, but that's only if you're within the range of the macros, right? They probably have yet to build and extend that footprint using small cells. They're just too focused on the mid band right now, which I don't mind, right? If you're densifying the mid band, I saw some small cells going up in New York City that have N41 on it. That's fine. But from a business perspective, if you're a shareholder, if you're a wireless tech enthusiast, you are going to question, when is T-Mobile going to make use of it? They're now 3 years deep into the merger, going on year 4. We have yet to hear any expansion of any type of millimeter wave from T-Mobile. It's not in the capital plans. The run rate of the capital plan to 9 to 10 billion, that's through 2026. That 9 to 10 billion does not call for any additional millimeter wave deployment. None, zero, zilch. So until they announce a plan to include a separate capital to deploy millimeter wave ain't getting deployed. And that's in the guidance through 2026. So what, they're going to start deployment in 2027, 28, 29, 30? No, I don't see that. And I don't see them making it a deployment to where it becomes a use case for mobile. As they stated, right now, they only see it as a use case for fixed wireless access. And that's a big maybe. So for now, T-Mobile and millimeter wave, they don't get along, right? Especially when Ulf, the person who took over Neville's position, comes out and says in Vegas for 2 huge events, Formula One and the Super Bowl, they're not using millimeter wave. That should let you know everything you need to know. If those are not huge events and use cases that make sense for millimeter wave, then nothing else will make sense. They're just not going to deploy it. So make sure you stay tuned for more. Like, share, subscribe, follow my social media outlets. This is Tyrone with Tech Live. See y'all in the next one. Peace.